Can you turn that down, the speed from the radio is just a little high.
120 cases from January 7.
Is that better?
Yes, it's much better.
200,000 since the pandemic
Thanks so
began
much.
last year.
And I'm going to get the guy on the caller. Guy on caller now.
Last through the Olympics,
Reverend
into
Thurston?
the Paralympics next month.
Two stunners at the Olympic Games this morning. 17-year-old swimmer Lydia Jacoby won the women's 100-meter breaststroke, knocking off defending champ and teammate Lily King. And tennis superstar Naomi Osaka got knocked out of the competition early, losing to the Czech Republic's Marketa Vondrousova. Two stunners. This is AP News. This morning, Alaska's 17-year-old swimmer Lydia Jacoby won the women's 100. Moderna wants to expand its kids' vaccine study to better assess safety. Shelley Adler has this.
Moderna says it plans to expand the size of its COVID-19 vaccine study in younger children to better detect rare side effects like the type of heart inflammation recently flagged by U.S. health authorities. The company adds it's in talks with the FDA to enroll more study participants. While teens receive the same dose as adults, younger children may need smaller doses, so drug makers' research may take more time.
Dr. Thurston is on.
Okay, Reverend Thurston?
For children 12 years and up, while Moderna is expecting an FDA
Can
ruling
you pull
on
that
its
down just a little bit
application in the
more?
coming
Still
days.
real loud.
Shelley Adler.
Hold on. I think I know what the issue is.
COVID
Oh,
shot.
thank you so much.
96% of
I
doctors
can't even hear
have,
Reverend
according to the
Thurston.
AMA, but only about 60% of nursing home staffers are vaccinated, compared with 80% of residents. I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
Moderna is expecting an FDA ruling on its
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 Chicago traffic update.
In Addison, Lake Street is closed in both
Okay, Reverend
directions.
Thurston?
Mill Road and Highview to the east.
I'm good.
You'll see some road
Good,
work
great
delays
hearing your
on
voice today.
westbound 8094, but the traffic volume has improved quite a bit. Still heavy. Drive to
What?
lanes had been blocked.
Postmates.
Now 19 minutes for the toll road to the Bishop
Lozano.
Freeway. It had been over an hour. And it's 14 minutes on the eastbound side. Inbound Stevenson, traffic's heavy
Okay,
on the ramp.
Postmate.
Inbound Ryan. Inbound Ryan delays.
Oh, have we let Maria know?
Local. It's 14 minutes now to get to downtown. Rangers of Columbus.
Okay, okay, Maria. We'll work that out, okay? Bye-bye.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
This is a WCPT moment in labor. When Serena Williams won her title at the Tennis Grand Slam tournament, we know she gets the same prize money as her male counterpart. However, prior to 1973, that wasn't always the case. When Billie Jean King captured her first Wimbledon title in 1966, she was surprised to find out that the winner of the men's tournament.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, thank you. Can you break this down? And bring Thurston up.
And 8 other women formed their own tournament, the Virginia Slims Invitational, where each woman was paid $1 before posing for the famous picture of them each holding up their dollar with the caption,
"It's still too
Contract
loud,
Pros." While the move was bold, the pay discrepancies continued.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hold on a sec.
Okay.
Hold on, we're just having some technical difficulty.
Okay. Can you hear me, Reverend Thurston?
The history of Air America lives here.
Okay.
This is
You're still too far back in the mix, but he'll work that out.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Do you have an idea for an invention, but you don't know what to do next? How do you get in front of companies or get a patent? Call InventHelp. They've been helping inventors just like you for 35 years.
And thousands of people contact them every month.
With 65 offices, you can meet with an InventHelp representative near you who will keep your idea confidential and explain their invention process step by step. InventHelp has helped over 10,000 inventors get patents. And they offer 3D animated prototypes.
Okay, how is it now?
Okay, I need you to bring that. It still needs to come down.
InventHelp's exclusive data bank includes over 9,000 companies who have agreed to confidentially review.
Is it good?
Okay, that's better, but bring it down just a little bit more. Speak up, Reverend Thurston. Can I hear you?
And get the help you need from InventHelp.
Reverend Thurston?
For free.
I don't know if he's talking.
No, then that means you can't hear me.
4380. Again, one.
Much like
We're going to be going on soon. I'll try getting it right.
okay, thank you.
Change the world, change the world. Yes, we can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today. It's Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. Yes, we are up on the air on Facebook Live. So everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. Hey, Francis and Carol and Linear Bob and Brian and Joyce and Lewis and Barbara Bacon and everybody, please like and share, like and share. And please go over to my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show, and like and share. I'm hearing just a little bit of static, but we're going to work that out on the Santita Jackson Show. So, it's just out of control, not just in Chicago, but all around the United States. And some people are making some traction on resolving the issues of violence, particularly Reverend Pastor Jerry McAfee up in Minneapolis. And we're going to talk with him because indeed he and the state attorney general, Keith Ellison, are now working together. And it seems that, you're going to hear a lot about their program, which we've discussed on this show before, deploying people who live in neighborhoods into neighborhoods to resolve crises. There's something going on. We're driving on expressways in Chicago and people feel like they're target practice, and in fact they are. We got a lot to talk about. Indeed, Dr. Deborah Holden has said that violence is a public health problem. We're going to talk with her shortly about that because in Flint, where she is residing, of course, she is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. They have declared public health emergency. So we need to talk about that. Why are we shooting each other, killing each other, cursing each other, hurting each other? Violence has many manifestations, not just at the end of a gun. Hey, A. King from Memphis, Tennessee, and Meddy and Marty and everybody else. So I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Of course, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text to that number. And so I want to hear your voices today. I want to know what you're thinking about this violence. We've had an upsurge. We had a downturn. We had a downturn in 2019, then we had an upsurge in 2020, and it just keeps going. I mean, we're shooting each other, we're killing each other, we're harming each other, and we're fighting each other on planes and on and on and on. I mean, there's a lot going on, and we're going to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show today. In the meantime, it is hot. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, is my home. And in Chicago, we're baking here. It needs sunscreen indoors in the shade. It's going to be 91 degrees, mostly sunny in Chicago today. AM 950 radio. My home to the north, Minneapolis, St. Paul, 94 degrees and sunny. The NASDAQ closed up 3 points yesterday, and the Dow closed up 82 points, and the S&P closed up 10. And everybody, are you watching the Olympics? I'm watching them where I can. I must tell you, I've been really, really busy, but you all know that. But America's winning these medals. I mean, we have a total of 22 medals. China has a total of 21 medals. Japan has 17 medals. Naomi Osaka was knocked out. Ooh, love Naomi. Oh my goodness. But it's quite a competitive season. And we're wondering what's going to happen with the women's gymnastics team. Will America's team be able to come back? I'm hoping so. I love Simone Biles and the leadership role that she has taken with these young athletes. She is just a gem, everybody. So you know what? Let's get right to it. Let's get to some of these headlines so we can get some good news from the anointed and brilliant Reverend Stephen Thurston, the teaching pastor of Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. Everybody, oof. A growing number of places and groups, according to CNN, are considering vaccine or mask mandates as COVID-19 cases continue to surge across the United States. California will require all state employees and healthcare workers to provide proof of vaccination status or get regular testing. That is once a week. New York City has a similar plan for its entire municipal workforce, including police officers and teachers. More than 50 major medical and health groups have issued a joint statement calling for all healthcare employees to mandate employees be vaccinated. What do you think about that? What do you think about a vaccine mandate? What do you think about that? Or do you need for it to be approved by the FDA before that happens? Or do you think we can't wait? I want to know what your thoughts are. The House Select Committee charged with investigating the January 6th insurrection will hold its first public hearing today. Everybody expect to see a lot of footage, video footage, that we have not seen before. According to insiders, this footage is particularly compelling and upsetting. You're going to hear people called racial epithets. You're going to see people physically hurt, viciously beaten. We will see. The committee will hear testimony from 4 police officers who were on the front lines the day of the attack. This is the first big public step for the committee's investigation, which has seen strong GOP pushback. President Biden announced plans to formally conclude the U.S. combat mission in Iraq by the end of this year, winding down another prolonged U.S. military engagement, unlike the troop withdrawal of Afghanistan. This decision was made with Iraq's urging, and President Biden made the announcement alongside the Iraq Prime Minister, everybody. So, what do you think about that? Should we get out with all deliberate speed? What about these other conflicts in which we are engaged all around the world? Did you know that Jeff Bezos offered NASA $2 billion to be reconsidered rather, for a key contract? His rival Elon Musk originally won the right to build a moon landing vehicle, but Bezos filed an objection. Everybody. 3 million people COVID, rich nations began obstructing the vaccine patent waiver. And I'm wondering, what about therapeutics? Because when you get the vaccine, when you get COVID, if you get it, how do you treat it? Dr. Shanina Knighton is going to be coming back to us in a couple of days to talk about these antibody treatments that you need to be asking for. Advocates are condemning President Biden for his plan to send 4,000 inmates back to prison after the pandemic. Legal advocates are calling on the Biden administration to reverse a plan to return thousands of federal inmates to prison once the pandemic ends, after the incarcerated people will have spent months, if not years, at home with their families in home confinement. And of course, today we're dedicating this show, I mentioned this yesterday, to Bob Moses. Indeed, he is one of the leading lights, one of the great unsung heroes of the civil rights movement. But those people who worked very closely with breaking Jim Crow in the United States in the 50s and 60s, everybody knows Bob Moses, brilliant mathematician. He was an American educator and an activist, and indeed, he guided young people, my parents included, through SNCC and guided them into activism. And God bless him, he made his transition at the age of 86. 86, indeed. Justice Democrats, Waleed Shaheed, said of Bob Moses something that's so profound. Bob Moses was a founding father of the America we have not yet become. God bless you, Bob Moses. The author of Mirror Moments, my guy, my birthday mate. Well, it's just a few days apart. Reverend Stephen Thurston. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Santita. Always good to hear your voice.
Great hearing your voice. Oh, we need some good news. Today we're going to be talking about, I know you've got some other obligations today, but I want you to come back because this will not be the only conversation that we're going to have about violence in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in America. In America, we have got a real problem. And Dr. King talked about it so long ago. That's why having a nonviolent movement was of such great moment, right? Because it was taking us away from how we typically do things. What is the good news? Or would you like to comment on that before you get into the good news?
I'll jump into the good news. I'm targeting our married couples today, but I think the principle translates, and it can possibly help us even in the lane of the violence that we see in communities. I want those who are married to take a flashback to your wedding day. For some of you, that was a long time ago. It was back in the black and white days. For others, it's in the days of color. Nonetheless, you can get there in that mind. And as you remember that day, you probably stood there gazing into the eyes of that person that you said that you loved and that you would love for the balance of your days. And you exchanged some vows that included a phrase, forsaking all others. This was included because the reality of life is that there will be many things and people that will come and compete with your time, your attention, and your love. From work to hobbies to the kids and church and friends, in-laws, just a plethora of things that could intrude into that relationship. And these intruders had and have the potential to find the cracks in your union and slowly seep in and weaken the bonds of your union, tearing that marriage apart. And these intruders, Santita, they don't just show up unexpectedly in marriages. As a matter of fact, they're normally there all along. And it's when we experience hurt or pain or conflict in a relationship that we find ourselves allowing these intruders to come in between our spouses and ourselves. We'll use the intruders to anesthetize the relationship deficits, to avoid critical and crucial conversations and confronting the conditions of our marital context. And so in essence, the intruders are just the symptom and not the source of a real problem in our marriage. And there's something broken in our connection that we need to be real and honest about that oftentimes we're not. So let's dive into it, because maybe your intruder of choice has become work. And you find yourself devoting more and more time and attention to it than your significant other. Well, workaholism is just a symptom. It's not the source. Could it be that the real issue is that you have attachment issues and you don't know how to connect emotionally, so you resort to work where you feel most competent? Or maybe you've got a praise addiction. You desire affirmation and praise, so you go where you can get it on a regular basis. Or you lack safety. You don't feel that the marriage is a safe space to be authentically you, so you withdraw to a place where the relationships are more positive. Or maybe there's a lack of freedom. Your spouse is controlling. You didn't see it on day one, but now you've seen it. And the only place where you can have your boundaries respected is in the work environment. Maybe that's not you. Maybe your intruder of choice is your child or children. Well, by nature, children are intrusions upon any marriage. But when you're parenting and you put parenting above marriage, there's a problem. Could the real issue be that you have a misperception about parenting and marriage? Let me remind you that parenting is temporary. Marriage oftentimes is permanent. You might need to adjust your value system appropriately. Or maybe you're an individual that has inappropriate boundaries with your kids. Since my spouse won't listen to me, at least the children will. That's your mindset. Or maybe because of transference issues with your parents, you over-identify with your children and overly involve yourself in their lives, neglecting your spouse, figuring that they're an adult, they'll figure it out, they'll make it all right. Or maybe thirdly, your intruder of choice is an affair. Again, this is a symptom and not a source. Affairs often emanate from an emotional space first before they manifest in a physical act. So the real issue could be that there's emotional emptiness in the marriage. Or maybe you're a narcissist that needs to surround yourself with people who will stroke your ego and admire you and ignore your imperfections. Or maybe you've got boundary issues and you're unable to set appropriate limits and hold true limits with other people in your life. Maybe you've just taken your marriage for granted and don't recognize it in spite of there not being an immediate crisis in play. Everything really is not okay. Some marriages can go for a while before the influence of intruders is felt, and you'll reach a point where what was once deep connection evolves into comfortably numb connection. Your marriage will only be as good as the investment that you make in it. And to properly protect your marriage from intruders, you're going to have to give your spouse a gift. Yep, I said the G word, a gift. And one of the greatest gifts that we can give our significant other is honesty and confrontation. We grow, actually, when someone who loves us wounds us by telling us painful truths that we need to hear. I know that probably wasn't the gift that you had in mind, but that's the gift that can help you get through the rough spot. And I get that I just caused some of you great anxiety because you think in your mind, there's that risk of hurting my spouse if I tell them the truth. Well, the question needs to be raised. Would you rather be hurt by the truth or comforted with a lie? Either adding the wrong things to a marriage, subtracting the right things from the marriage, or both, ultimately cause all intruder problems. In your vows, you said forsaking all others. That's not just referring to people. That includes anything that will intrude upon the development of intimacy and love and break down the bonds of your marriage. Listen, as good stewards of the covenant that many of us made in marriage, we've got to work diligently to protect our marriages from things that can ultimately tear them apart. You got the power to do it. That's your charge and your challenge today, to protect your relationship from intruders.
Let me ask you this before you go. Do you think that that's brilliant insights as we look at these intruders, particularly, the intruder that makes us react the most is the affair, right? Do you think that if you really stepped back and realized that it's not about the person with whom you're having the affair, it really is about you and something that's going on with you? I mean, as all relationships are, which is really the thrust of your book, Mirror Moments. Everyone, I urge you to get it. Do you think that if we kind of stepped back and looked at it differently and took our egos out of it, the affairs wouldn't have the same kind of sting that they have?
Definitely. We've got to answer the question, what's wrong with me? What don't I like about me? What am I challenged with about myself? Because it's rarely the other person. There's something empty on the inside of us, something that's not being fulfilled. And it could be that your significant other really isn't built to deal with that, or something that they actually can't do for you, that you really need to work out on yourself, for yourself, and by yourself. And if that were in place, you wouldn't look outside of the relationship to have that need, that emotional, that intellectual, that spiritual need filled. You're trying to fill it in the wrong place, and it's not going to work out too well at the end. We know how the story goes, Santita, with affairs and outside relationships. They still leave us empty because that's not the source that's going to fill the hole that's oftentimes on the inside of the individual.
It's interesting. And I think that we need to step back and start looking at looking at everything very differently, because I think this ego-based approach to relationships, it dooms relationships. My mother and both my parents said, divorce doesn't resolve anything. Because if you haven't worked out whatever you need to work out with the first choice, you're going to find somebody else and you're going to find the same.
That's right.
Okay, Emma, what do you think about that?
There's going to be a common thread, and the common thread is going to be you. Everybody I've ever dated that I broke up with, the common thread is me.
How about that?
Something about me. Something small, something big, whatever it was, it still boiled down to Stephen and what Stephen needs to adjust within Stephen.
All right. Everybody, mirror moments is something that you need to adjust within yourself. But I can't let you go before we're going to bring on Dr. Deborah Holden at the bottom of the hour, along with attorney Robert Patillo, to talk about the violence that we're seeing in Chicago and in the United States. I mean, this is a mirror moment for us with respect to that. Where do we go from here, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King famously asked and really asserted? I don't know if it was a question as much as it was a prescription. Reverend Thurston, what is all this violence saying about us?
Yeah, that we lack coping skills. It's like the prefrontal cortex isn't developed in so many people. And I don't say that to be snarky, but it's like individuals don't have the ability, seemingly, to take the moment to analyze the situation, to value it, to determine, is this as major as I'm making it? Is the offense that I say that I've suffered worth me pulling a weapon and taking another person's life? Or am I doing that as an easy route because I don't know how to have critical and crucial conversations and say, Santita, you hurt me, you offended me, you wronged me. How can we make this right? And so I immediately jump to taking your life. There's a big gap there. So there's something that's lacking on the inside of course, many of these situations are younger people. There's something lacking in the mind frame and in the setup and the intellectual makeup of individuals that's causing us to jump over a whole lot of steps and get to the step where we take another life.
Everybody think about that. I think there's a lot that we've got to examine because I think it's cultural, I think it's personal, it's spiritual, it's economic. There's just so much. There's so many things. So much. Dr. King said that the bombs that we dropped overseas were going to explode at home in violence. He said that riots are the language of the unheard. Reverend Thurston, I've got about 30 seconds left. Violence doesn't just come at the end of a gun. It's the way we speak to each other. It's the public discourse, personal discourse, all of that. The last 30 seconds belong to you.
I would challenge individuals to learn to honor the humanity of people, to see other people as they see themselves. From a Christian lens, we talk about love and how to love God is to love our brother and our sister that we engage with on a regular and a consistent basis. Maybe it is that we have such a challenge in loving others, even if we don't know them, because there's a deficiency in the arena of loving ourselves. Taking the time to understand ourselves, be at peace with ourselves, study ourselves, be honest with ourselves, as I just did a few minutes ago, in stating that I was the common denominator in any relationship that I've been in. Was that easy to do? Definitely not on a platform like this, but it's the reality, it's the truth. And as we get to know self and move past some of the internal challenges and hurdles that we have to love ourselves, we can transfer that same peace and love and joy to other people that we encounter.
Let's talk about violence in America, not just in Chicago, but in Chicago, Minneapolis, every place. And what are the solutions? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Reverend?
The history of Air America.
When you're up in your call.
Progressive talk where facts matter.
Reverend?
Do you have an idea for an invention?
No, I can't hear you. Hey, babe, you need to turn down the.
Call Invent
I
Help.
think they're having some technical difficulties.
35 years. And thousands of people.
Can you hear better now?
Yeah, I just need you to turn the radio down. If you turn this radio feed down, I can hear him better.
Is it good now?
Yes, that's much better. That's much, now it's back up. They're going to have to work on their Postmate.
Okay. Yeah, yes, I'm trying.
I know.
Let me get the other guests on.
Okay, now you go on and get them on.
Companies who you new ideas like yours.
Thanks.
Take action right now and get
All right, everybody, what are we going to do about
Call today for free
violence in America?
217-4380.
And in the United States and in Chicago, this is not just a Chicago problem. Flint has declared a state of emergency because of gun violence.
Listening to WCPT 820.
Okay.
Here's the latest Chicago traffic updates.
On Chicago.
Okay. Let me see.
Congestion northbound approaching Grant Park. 12 minutes. Marquette to Monroe with additional closures now in place, including Columbus for Lollapalooza setup. 8094 westbound traffic has improved dramatically after overnight construction cleared. It's now
Dr. Deborah is on.
Hello.
Freeway.
I'm getting Attorney Priscilla right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Doctor, for holding on.
The Eisenhower 28 minutes from
I'm here.
Huh?
Stephanie Miller.
Republicans have lost
It is loud.
70 times.
We're trying to work on that.
Affordable Care Act. This is the third time loser at this Supreme Court. I know I tend to be rash, Chris. I tend to be, what do you call me, a loose cannon?
A little bit.
I am prepared to go out on a limb and say, I do not think Republicans are very good losers.
Stephanie Miller, weekday mornings, 8 to 11. Sponsored by the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. Visit 4Porsche.com. The number 4Porsche.com.
If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your existing home, then you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender who will always look out for your financial best interest. Low interest rates and low housing inventory have
I have Attorney Patillo on.
Okay.
over 25%.
Is there any way to turn this radio
Unfortunately,
down
many
at
listeners
all?
experience a
Let me see if I could talk to one of the people here with me.
Okay. No, I mean,
great news.
Postmate,
If you
relax, honey,
qualify,
because you're just
we can
learning.
That's
Okay, so no,
home's
just
value
relax.
to pay off
relax.
your debt.
And the
Think
good,
of all
the
the stress you'd
thing
eliminate
that you're doing
and how much
well
money
is
you'd save
you're
using
doing
home's
a
equity
great
to
job.
pay
Just
off your
relax.
debt and
Relax.
substantially
And just
reduce
ask
monthly
questions and you'll be
payments.
fine,
Team
okay?
Hochberg has helped thousands of radio listeners use their home's equity to eliminate debt, but we can't help if you don't call 855-56-DAVID or visit 56david.com. That number again, 855-563-2843 or visit.
I'm going to get your Pearl once we get back into the show.
Okay, that would be great.
NMLS
I need her as soon as possible.
Right now, our country
Do we
feels
have,
divided, but there's a place where people are coming together.
I was nervous to talk to someone so different than me.
What was that?
do we have Attorney
Yeah, Attorney Patillo is up.
Okay. Let me know as soon as you can that people are up, okay?
Feels good.
I got you.
Okay.
It gives me a lot of hope too.
Take a step toward bringing
About 15 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
together. Start a conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/one small step. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
The Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and Facebook Live, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Meet my morning stars over here, Joyce and Stanley and Philip and Barbara. And is it Tasha Max? I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly. If you could, my girl, if you could put it out for me phonetically, that would help me a lot. And Carol and Lorraine and Mark and everybody else and Meddy. And happy birthday, Meddy. Everybody give Meddy Rodriguez some really wonderful birthday love. Her birthday was yesterday. I missed that. I'm so sorry. But I know it's your birthday month. So go on and give her some birthday love, everybody. Let's talk about violence in America. We're going to devote the show to that. And big shout out to Reverend Jesse Jackson and Bishop William Barber and Attorney Barbara Arnwine and Attorney Darrell Jones and so many who were arrested yesterday fighting for our right to vote, Blessings to them. Let's talk about violence in America. You know, we are experiencing expressway shootings in Chicago, for example. My brother, Jonathan, I was going out to lunch with one of my oldest and dearest sister friends in the world. And indeed, she's my oldest friend, Claudette. And he said, I do hope you all will not get on the expressway. We were headed downtown. I said, oh, okay. And she said, oh, no, don't worry about that. I mean, she's even switched up cars, right? He said, because they are shooting people. Now, this was a little more than a month ago. And we are now exceeding numbers that we've ever seen before. We're shooting people on expressways. When I say we, it's a collective we. We now are watching gun violence tick up in the United States. I mean, really surging to record levels. But if you listen to talk radio, you hear the violence. If you listen to the debate about the vaccinated and unvaccinated, you hear the violence. You hear the manhandling of people, if you will. This aggressive mean-spiritedness with which we deal with each other day in, day out. And it manifests itself at the end of a gun or with both of your hands when you choke someone or when you choke someone's speech. There's a whole lot going on here. Well, Flint, Michigan, has declared a state of emergency over gun violence. Sheldon Neely, their mayor, has declared a state of emergency in this city to gun violence. According to Mayor Neely, there have been 158 non-lethal shootings in the city in 2021, a nearly 80% increase from 88 in 2020. Everybody, in 2020, they had 88. Thus far, halfway into the year, they've had 158. What is going on? Of course, we'll be talking with Pastor Jerry McAfee at the top of the hour, and Shapiro Wells, and Attorney Robert Patillo joins us now. We're talking about gun violence, state of emergency. We had, of course, a shift from a lot of things that we talked about, but as you're going to hear with Dr. Deborah Verholden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State, we're going to expand the conversation about health beyond COVID because there's so many health impacts every aspect of our lives. But she, in many respects, always sees the politics in our health decisions, whether they're personal or institutional. And she has been saying repeatedly that gun violence, that violence is a public health issue. And that sounds like, makes you go, like Arsenio Hall used to do. But Dr. Deborah Verholden, it seems that the mayor of your city agrees with you. Mayor Sheldon Neely has declared a state of emergency in the city due to gun violence. What is a state of emergency, and why do you think, or do you think it was necessary to declare one with respect to gun violence in Flint, Michigan?
Yeah, good morning, Santita. So,
good morning.
You know, the one great thing I would say I love about my mayor is we worked very closely together during the pandemic. And who he really, he was always somebody who wanted to know what the science was, what the data had to say, what the, evidence was. And then he would, act accordingly. Sometimes he would say, well, this isn't just about the data and things like that. So I've appreciated working with him to that extent because he's not tone deaf to science and data, and he's also willing to make tough decisions. What we saw during COVID, two things that in hindsight, I guess I could have said maybe these were predictable, but I think I was just hopeful they would go some other way, is we saw tremendous increases in opioid overdose deaths, and we saw tremendous increases in violence. And I would have thought opioids would have been a little harder to get. Not true. I would have thought many of the things connected to violence, and now there's a myth about violence, that all violence is from hardened violent criminals involved in the drug trade. That's simply not true anymore. It's not. A lot of violence that we see are literally petty beefs gone awry, petty beefs that picked up on social media and then played themselves out on the street, but started on social media. So even the nature and the evolution of violence has changed and is changing. But I just thought, we're on a shelter-in-place order. I thought a lot of the things that contribute to both these things, overdose death and to violence, specifically gun violence, we would have seen less of them. Quite the contrary, in all the major cities, gun violence went up during COVID. I know gun violence went up in Chicago. I know it went up in Baltimore. I know it went up in Flint. It went up in Detroit. It went in every city that I've checked. It went up. And so, the same way when we declared COVID an emergency, when the White House did that, it came with something. So we said, the COVID pandemic has put us in a state of emergency. It's a public health crisis. And then several other orders followed that. The CARES Act, provision of services, testing, obviously the allocation of resources for the vaccine, payroll protection, all of these other things came along with it. So the reason you declare the state of emergency is not just so you can have something cute on the book. It's to then justify the sequelae of orders and bills and resources that come behind it. So following the declaration of an emergency around gun violence in Flint, 6 subsequent executive orders followed that, and it creates a really robust system for addressing gun violence in Flint. We have emergency response teams, and you all are familiar with this because the ceasefire Safe Streets program was birthed in Chicago. And so we'll have something like that that'll be like a go team so that when something happens, a GO team will go out. It'll include a social worker, mental health counselor, violence interrupter, etc. We're now working on scaling up violence interrupters in our community so we can prevent things from happening even before they happen. They've now availed mental health and psychological first aid training for all first responders, and now there'll be a community-wide scale-up so that anybody in the community can get that training. It's funny, right? We all want to take CPR, but the likelihood that you encountering somebody having a cardiac event outside of the hospital where you would be able to use that CPR and they survive is less than 0.1%. The likelihood that you would encounter somebody out in the community in need of mental health first aid is 1 in 10. So we're trying to, again, take what the data tell us, what the numbers tell us, what the science tell us, and get the resources out into community to try to bring this thing under control. So I'm really excited about it. I wish we could do this in other cities across the country. I do believe it's needed.
Attorney Robert Patillo, you're down in Atlanta. We're seeing this surge of gun violence, this surge of violence, really. We're seeing it on planes. I mean, every time I've had to take a lot of planes over the past few weeks, and I just am prayerful every time I get on because something's happened here. What about gun violence? What about violence in America? What's going on here? What about the state of emergency that was declared in Flint? Should that be declared nationally?
Well, I do think we need to have national action. Even we saw former senator from California, Barbara Boxer, yesterday was assaulted and mugged and robbed while out and about. So I don't think anybody can simply think that they are exempt from these things. But we do have to look at the nature of policing over the course of the last year. And I think I've mentioned this before, that we saw after the protest around the beating or the killing of George Floyd, around Breonna Taylor, there were calls for police reform nationwide, and many states and municipalities tried to institute even the most minor level of reforms, firing officers who tased students in Atlanta, for example, or suspending officers who killed Rashard Brooks, etc., in an attempt to get better policing in black communities, trying to pass George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, etc. And the response from police officers nationwide, this has not been an isolated incident, has been mass defections from policing. The city of Baltimore is at a 600 police officer deficit. New York, I think, is down nearly 1,400 officers. Atlanta's down 700 officers. And for those who are still on the force, many have simply decided, based upon the police union's directives, to not do any policing. There was a call in Atlanta by the police union telling their officers to not respond to any calls except for officer down calls because the city instituted an anti-chase policy. So when you have police officers who simply decide they're not going, if they can't beat people, they ain't going to do no policing, well, then criminals understand that they have a free-for-all. And I also think we have to look at the fact that the nation went through one of the most severe traumas that we've gone through since World War II, quite frankly. When you have the entire nation locked down for 15 months, you have 600,000 individuals who are no longer in the country because they have died. You have a generation of students that have been out of school for, in many cases, over a year. You have families that have been going through economic distress. We've seen the numbers of divorces go up, domestic violence go up, addiction and alcoholism go up during the course of the pandemic. And we have to figure out how we work through those issues as a nation. I think the gun violence is a symptom of that going forward. So if we're not willing to look at this from a holistic basis, to look at the causes and the impact of it, and what we can do as a nation psychologically to heal from it, and also to have a policing system that actually decides they feel like policing, and also recruiting new officers who are both interested in protecting their communities and in protecting the civil rights of individuals. I think we're going to have a hard time getting getting this under control. And also, I think many people have taken advantage of the fact that jails have been, for the most part, not bringing in as many people because of COVID, that the court systems have been closed down. So many minor offenses or even some major offenses haven't been going to trial. More people who would normally be in jail or out on bond. So it's a cacophony of issues all working together in concert. I do think that at this point, President Biden to the crimes are to find out and set national standards on what can be done to bring this down, and also look at what policy implications can be implemented that will help to ameliorate these issues.
You know, Mrs. Chaparral Wells, Chaparral, who's a member of the family here, as are you, Dr. Deborah Holden, as are you, Attorney Robert Patillo, and I would be remiss if I did not say that he has a fabulous radio show on the iconic WAOK every Sunday. If you want to hear what you just heard, you can hear that and more on his own show. It's from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Please give him your support. Chaparral Wells, you have been impacted personally by gun violence in the most profound way. Indeed, your podcast, Somebody, has been downloaded more than 1.5 million times. You're moving toward the 2 million download mark. And you're receiving all kinds of accolades, but I know you certainly did not want them in this way. What are you making of what happened in Flint? I mean, should we do the same thing here? I mean, our mayor, has really tried to construct and implement plans to meet the violence that's taking place everywhere, and yet we're having more violence than ever before. Chaparral.
Well, Santita, thank you so much for having me on today. And I wanted to say that I absolutely love Robert Patillo because this man brings it every time. Let me say this, Santita. I know that for Chicago, we are on a work stoppage. Police are on a work stoppage. They're not doing anything. No one actually wants to admit what Robert just broke down, that because of this defund the police policy and, Americans pushing back on police brutality, the police have decided not to work. They are basically getting paid to do nothing. I could tell you that in Chicago, the majority of the crime is happening in 5 to 6 neighborhoods. It's not all over Chicago. It is targeted for these certain areas. Day after day, you hear all of this crime being committed in the same neighborhoods every time. Just on Saturday, my one of my close friends, her son was murdered right there in Lawndale. He was killed. He was 19 years old, Julian Jackson. And I'm looking every day because of what has happened to me in my own personal life. I have this obsession with following the murders that are happening in Chicago. And 95% of them are Black men. 95% of the men that are killed are Black. And so we have, in Chicago, they have this disassociation with Black men. They do not care. They don't care to follow up on the murders, to try to figure out every narrative that comes with the shooting also states the suspect fled in a car. No description given. And nothing else is done. And so if right now the murder clearance rate in Chicago is about 15%. So if 85% of the people are getting away with the murders, they feel that they can kill with impunity. And we have no recourse right now, the way the system is set up, because the mayor is battling with the FOP and they're pushing back against the mayor to make her look bad. And the result is more Black people dying every day. And so as a mom who has gone through this, I have to comfort these new moms who are coming into the circle of pain and of distress because of the fact that they have lost their child. And I know that Dr. Verhoeven talks about the impact of gun violence, but the mental health that families go through, not just mothers and fathers, but the siblings, of losing a child, we are in a crisis. We need to declare this a national crisis.
But I
gun
think
violence impacts us in so many ways.
But I think that's what she was speaking to. And Dr. Deborah Holden, jump in here, please, because you said this is a public health crisis precisely because of the physical and mental health issues that result, that are the result of these of killing someone, of hurting someone's loved one. It's just, my goodness, when one person and when something is wrong with my baby, something is wrong with me, as the song says. If something happens to someone you love, it also happens to you, Dr. Deborah Holden. When you got a loved one in the hospital, you're there too, and you don't get out until they do, right?
Well, everybody gets impacted. It has tentacles. I literally had this conversation with my daughter yesterday. Yesterday marked the 1-month anniversary of the murder of her partner and her soon-to-be-born daughter's father. He was murdered in Baltimore on June 26th. And yesterday, the person who shot him, or who they say shot him, is arrested. Mm-hmm. It was his 24th birthday, the person who shot him. It marked the 1-month anniversary of the killing itself, and we're now 4 weeks out from when my daughter is due. And so as we reflected, and I just really watched her as somebody who's been profoundly impacted, we reflected how sad it was that her partner lost his life, how sad it was that this petty beef escalated to this, how sad it is that India will never meet her father, how sad it is for both families because it's the one guy's birthday and he's in jail and will likely be in jail for the rest of his life, and how sad it is for Ishmael's family to celebrate this 1-month anniversary. I mean, it's just a game full of losers and tragedy and heartache. Like, no one wins in this game. No one wins. And so the thought of a national declaration, I do believe we need that, but we couldn't even get a national mask mandate, and so I think $1.9 trillion in this stimulus package, and I'm now watching all kinds. I'm a researcher, so I'm looking at what's coming out in the research space. The stuff that they're throwing money at and how much money they're throwing at things. I have never seen anything, and I'm sure it's happened in, maybe not my lifetime, but it has happened in the, history of government. But in my lifetime as a professional in the last few years, I've never seen this much money thrown at anything except the air quotes war on drugs, things that are in my space. And so, do I think we need a national declaration? Yeah. But that national declaration then has to be accompanied by resources to actually do the work. We have these gun buyback programs. You want people to put down their guns, but pick up what? What they put down the gun and then they pick up what? So we do need a national declaration, but just like with COVID, that national declaration has to have resources attached to it. And like Attorney Patel was saying, it's got to be connected to all the different systems. We oftentimes will just victim blame, and we'll go to solve the problem and create solutions that don't match the level of the problem. So most of the resources that we have around violence are focused on the victims and the perpetrators, as if those people exist and do what they do in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. It doesn't deal with the systems and the structures and the context that create, communities and neighborhoods and, just coping strategies that people use that are conducive for violence. It doesn't deal with the fact that, in most places, and Flint's only a city of 100,000 people, and we're 60 officers down. 60 officers down in a city of 100,000. That's like, we're less than half of the police that they say that we need. So we got to deal with all those issues. Otherwise, we're sort of saying one thing and saying that it matters, but we're not actually, there's no meat on the bone. There's nothing to back that, in fact, this is something that we care about and that we see we could better treat and better control, better mitigate in a public health framework.
You know, we're talking about violence in America today and violence in Chicago, gun violence in Chicago, in Minneapolis, in Baltimore, in Detroit, in Los Angeles, in Atlanta. It's everywhere. What's going on, everybody? And Robert Patillo, I have about just under 2 minutes before we have to go to break. If we begin to confront gun violence, if you will, we might have to confront the military. It seems that we're at war all over the world, all over the world. Um, I think we might be asking um, a deeper question that we don't even know that we're asking, that we need to really look at. You know, just how we handle conflict. We don't value. We don't. We put war over diplomacy, right? And I mean, just we're very aggressive. Attorney Patillo.
Well, George Carlin said it best when he said it's hard to preach peace in a nation where the national anthem talks about rockets and bombs. I can't think of any other country where we're talking about the bombs bursting in the air and the rockets red flare. In the national anthem of the nation. I do think we have to reevaluate the way that we have conflict resolution, the way that we discuss our fellow people. Part of our capitalistic society is we put everyone in competition with everyone else. Me having means that you can't have. You having means that I don't have. And we put folks in a confined area when you give them limited economic opportunities and limited access to education, limited access to mobility and home ownership. We see this in a cyclical manner. The reason that the Notre Dame mascot is the Fighting Irish is that when the Irish were in the same position as us, they were known for being drunks who fought all the time. We took them out of that same social position. They stopped being so. They became the police officers of New York, for example. The Italian American community for years was subjugated in the same way. That's why you had all the Italian gangsters and mafia, so on and so forth. You take them out of that condition, and now they are prosperous business owners and part of society. So we have to look at the societal conditions that lead to those upticks in crime, and take people out of those. Look at the causes of the crime, not just the results of the crime. And if it works for every other community, it should be able to work for us also.
Let's talk about it, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about gun violence. Should it be considered? Should it be declared a public health crisis? I mean, should we declare a state of emergency about gun violence and about verbal violence? Don't stop at guns, everybody. Please don't stop there. We got a lot of work to do. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes.
This is the
All right, you guys, Simone Biles is out of the Olympics. She will not compete for the rest of the team final, according to NBC. I am so hurt.
That's very disappointing.
Oh! They said,
Miss Jackson, is it better now with the sound?
It's, yeah, I mean, it's...
Okay, because what happened was our ENCO system has been like really pooping out on us these last couple days.
Okay.
And right now we have the North Studio ENCO and the South Studio, and we're running all our commercials through the North Play 1 bump.
Okay.
So I'm just taking the commercials out of OL during break, so hopefully that helps with the sound.
Okay, yeah, it was just too loud, that's all. You know.
Okay. Yeah. Again, if it continues to be a problem, just let me know, and I'll try doing what I can.
Of course, I know you're working on it. So don't
Thank
worry
you,
about
Jackson.
that. Of course.
I'm gonna get on. I'm gonna get on the guest for the next hour.
Okay, but let me see who's going to stay. Dr. Deborah Verholden, can you stay with us, or do you have to leave now? I'm sensitive to your schedule.
No, I can stay.
Okay, because we've got Pastor McAfee from Minneapolis and Dwight McKee, and we're going to be talking about this. Pastor McAfee has a program that's extremely successful in Minneapolis. Robert Patillo, you should have him on your show if you have not had him there already, to talk about what they're doing up there. I mean, they are literally deploying pastors and people in the neighborhood into the streets, and they are driving crime all the way down. All the way down. Happy birthday, Daryl. I saw that it was your birthday as well, so I'm going to put you down here, you and Meddy or Maria. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Oh, July is such a great month. Oh, even though you all are Leos, but it's all right. It's all good. It's all good. Happy birthday to you, though, Daryl. And I'm going to say that on the air as well. So thank you all so much for being with us today. Okay. You still there, Chaparral?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, just checking, just checking. So we're going to have quite the conversation, I want you all to hear what Pastor McAfee is doing.
Pastor McAfee is on.
Okay, Pastor McAfee.
Yep.
Hey, senior pastor of New Salem Missionary Baptist Church, my church home up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Would introduce to everyone on the panel here, but and they want to sit and listen to what you're doing there. One of the world's most preeminent epidemiologists came out of Johns Hopkins at 24 on a full scholarship with her PhD. Dr. Deborah Furholden, she's someone who should be talking to your church and to you and the Attorney General about. She said she's been saying for months, years, that gun violence and violence in our country is a public health crisis. So I want to connect the two of you, Pastor McAfee, and of course, Attorney Robert Patillo, who is the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. And I told you specifically I was going to introduce you to Mrs. Shapiro Wells and her Somebody podcast. You think you might have seen her on Dateline a couple of weeks ago. Pastor McAfee, panel, but Shapiro, Mrs. Wells, I wanted to introduce you to the pastor.
Tio Hardman's on too.
Thank you so much, Santita. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Pastor McAfee, Shapiro Wells, Mrs. Shapiro Wells, Pastor McAfee.
Hello.
Hello. It's so nice to introduce you today, and I appreciate you viewing the podcast and listening to the Dateline.
Oh, thank you. And you're certainly in our prayers. And I already sent some stuff out to some people in that area. And prayerfully, we can try to get something turned up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate any help.
Well, bless your heart. Bless your heart. Well, I mean, my father depends on him. And of course, Reverend was arrested yesterday. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you. That was a lovely surprise. I said, okay.
Yeah.
Gail Supwees, what is this? Like, do you really need to be arrested? Like, right now? Okay. Okay.
Hey.
Yeah.
He's the
Yeah.
Mr. McKee is on as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're going to get things moving with this program that you've got. Deborah, I think you'll be very interested to hear about this program that has in Flint, in Minneapolis. They're doing a lot of great work. They're beginning to get a lot of national recognition because of it. And so,
I'm excited to hear about it.
oh yeah, absolutely. And that you all should meet because people like that, Pastor McAfee, people like Deborah Furholden, who has so many resources and so much information. We need to have her before our people. If only to let our children know that people like her exist and professions like hers need to be populated. Particularly now.
Hey, Dr. D.
Hey, Dwight McKee.
How you doing?
Doing all right. I'm all right.
Okay. Whew. Okay, everybody, stand by. It's good to see you all today. Good to be with you today. Simone Biles is out, you guys. Oh, she's not going to be in the women's final. Oh. That's like my headline now. Over War and Peace. It's Simone Biles. We've been waiting for her. Bless her heart.
15 seconds.
Okay.
We change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
The Santita Jackson Show, Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. These are my homes on the radio, among other places. And of course, Facebook Live, the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and over on WCPT 820. If you want to hear a podcast of the show, go to WCPT820.com/Santita. WCPT820.com/Santita, so that you can hear the show without the commercials. How about that? And of course, like and subscribe on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. The Santita Jackson Show. I'm on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG. At Santita J on Twitter, on and on and on. And everybody, please like and share this Facebook Live broadcast. Like and share, like and share. We're talking about violence in America today. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to get to a couple of these headlines and get right to it. Chicago will have a high of 91 degrees. It's already muggy, everybody. Nice and warm. Sunny. And of Minneapolis, 94 degrees. It will be sunny. The NASDAQ closed up 3 points yesterday. The Dow closed up 82 points. The S&P 500 closed up 10 points. Happy birthday, Daryl and Meddy. Meddy and Daryl, July babies, just like me. I love it, I love it, I love it. Everybody, breaking news, Simone Biles. Well, we're going to have to do without her. America's team, that's right. The Tokyo Olympics final takes place at 6:45. I mean, like right now. She will not compete for the rest of the team final, according to NBC Sports. Biles, the world's best gymnast, left the arena with a member of the medical staff after her first rotation. She attempted a vault, but only performed 1.5 out of 2.5 twists. Ow, wow. She returned to the arena, but she's wearing her team sweatsuit. Oh, God bless you, Jordan Childs and Grace McCallum and Sanisa Lee. They're going to have to perform on each apparatus without her. Wow, wow, wow. That's big, big, big news. In the meantime, America is leading at this point in the medals race. 22 medals, United States. China, 21. Japan, 17. And on and on and on. Oh boy, but we're all heartbroken about Simone Biles, but we're sending her much love, everybody. A growing number of places and groups are considering vaccine or mask mandates as COVID-19 cases continue to rise. What do you think about that, everybody? What about these vaccine mandates? What about mask mandates? The Capitol riot, the House Select Committee charged with investigating the January 6th insurrection will hold its first public hearing today. The testimonies and the video are supposed to be quite compelling. We cannot wait to see how that is all going to play out, everybody. So let's talk about this violence in America, everybody. Not just gun violence in America. Of course, people who are taking the expressways or driving on them in Chicago have become target practice. That is how people are feeling. But we're seeing increasing numbers of death by guns. We're also hearing our public discourse continue to coarsen and become more and more mean-spirited, which can erupt in violence. There is a whole lot going on, but there's some other people who are making some moves that are quelling this violence, who are mitigating this violence. Let's talk about where the violence comes from. Let's talk about where it's going and what we can do about it. Of course, we have been talking with Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, who's been saying that we need to declare gun violence a public health issue. She's been saying it for years. Hello, show on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. He's also the Southeastern Regional Director of Rainbow Push in Atlanta. And of course, our own Chappelle Wells, who has been touched profoundly by gun violence. Her son was shot and killed, Cortland Copeland. Indeed, that's the name of their foundation, honoring this young man's life and all of the potential that he did have. And of course, we're joined by Dr. D. Dwight McKee, a noted social scientist. And we've just got a whole lot of you today. But I wanted to, joining Pastor McAfee from Minneapolis, St. Paul, is Tio Hardiman, our own here in Chicago, violence interrupters. We love Tio for all of the work that he does on the ground, unheralded. It's not as widely known in Chicago or around the country, all the work that he does to help keep us alive. We love you, Tio Hardiman, and thank you for being with us. Pastor, our pastors mean so much in our lives, not just in the Black world. I mean, just everywhere. Our religious figures mean everything to us. And one of the things that I love about Pastor Jerry McAfee is that he is willing to get down in the streets with us where we live. He doesn't sit above us, he dwells among us. And so they have got a tremendous program that where they are you really taking on violence head on. Pastor McAfee, what's going on in Minneapolis?
Well, thank you, Santita. You know, as I've shared with you all on many occasions, that before the situation with George Floyd ever occurred, that we had a major problem with violence. And since George Floyd, I think we've had over 100 and some homicides, 900 people shot. I think it was in 95 or so, Minneapolis, known as Murderapolis. We tried way back then to talk to them about violence, a health issue. To my sister, who's been talking about it for years, we have as well. We had 3 kids, 2 of which died. One young girl, 6, one 8. The young boy, LaDavion, shot in the head in April. April 30th. And so for about 20 days or more, we did prayer vigils right outside the hospitals that they were in. From that, we had the idea that what would happen in working with the police departments in Minneapolis and St. Paul if they identify the worst hot spots in the cities. In North Minneapolis, there were 4 hot spots. South Minneapolis, there was 1 or 2. St. Paul, there was, I think, a couple. And in Brooklyn Park, there was 1. And so what we did, along with Louis King of OIC and Alfred Badminton Johnson of His Works United Churches and the presidents of the State Baptist, PAW, COGIC, and AME, we got together and said what we might do for 21 straight days. Each church occupy that block during the hot times of the day. Not just occupy it for intervention, but to discover what the needs are as well. Who needs a job, who needs treatment, who might just need to talk. And so we're going on our 3rd round now. So for 21 straight days, we occupied the 4 worst areas north, 2 over south, and in St. Paul with Pastor Ronnie Patterson and his people. South Minneapolis, Pastor Carmen Means and Pastor Chavez Russell. North Minneapolis, Pastor Brian Herron, Elder Bruce Carpenter, Kemp, Bishop Howell on one of the worst areas, and then New Salem on Lowry and Logan. And so we occupied them 24/7 as the power that needs to be. But we also did something else I thought that was unique. We got a good relationship with our 4th Precinct Commander and with Chief Rondo. And so we asked them, as well as the Sheriff's Department, as well as State Patrol, to help patrol those areas as well, to shore up those days, those times. At the end of 21 days, we came together and we had the police department to give the numbers. And so in one area where the young girls were shot at, the crime went down by 68%. Other areas, 18 to 20%. And mostly every place where we planted our foot, crime went down. Now, there was one of our members did get shot, mother out of Shiloh Temple. She didn't get caught in the crossfire. They were shooting down the street because as we occupied the times and the blocks, it moved them away. And so that's what we've done, because the reality is this. These kids and these grown-ups are connected to somebody in somebody's churches. And if we can get the churches back out of the churches and back on the block, because here's what we know is dangerous, period. Not to go out is dangerous, and to go out is dangerous. And so I'm of the opinion that nobody's going to save us. We got to do it. And so we've been occupying these blocks. We're on our third go around now. And we got the great support of the police, our friend, Attorney General Keith Ellison. And the governor heard about it and called and said he wanted to support what we're doing because, as you all know, not many people will help support our freedom. And so we've had great results, and we're continuing to move it. That's about it in a nutshell.
That's a lot. I mean, but you find that going out into the community, which makes a case for community policing, right? Police who live in the community, who dwell amongst us, being part of, a team that would support a neighborhood. You're finding you're digging down and you're doing social work too. I mean, I think that's why the whole defund the police, the language of that, I said, wait a minute, I think you all are really you're stepping on yourselves because what you're talking about is spreading the money around so that you would get social workers, so that you would get churches involved, so that you would get other people who could give spiritual and psychological and physical support and find out about the financial supports that they need. Is that key to this, to talking to people about what's happening with them, Pastor McAfee?
Definitely. Relationship is so important, from the police to the churches to the block. I mean, we got a young man 2 weeks ago, and this because the whole thing is in 3 stages. There's the intervention, and there's the prevention side that deals with jobs, mental health treatment. We even have a mental health facility out of Zion Baptist Church with Pastor Heron and Dr. Asia King, where we've been able to garner the support of some of our Black psychiatrists and psychologists who give the free help. But this young man came, and he did not have, he had just graduated with a certificate in bricklaying. And he was the only guy of his whole class that did not get placed. That's highly abnormal because there's not many bricklayers. Well, because of our resources, his girlfriend is the one who actually we were talking to at one of the sites. We found out about him. We made the necessary calls, and he got hired at $40 an hour on a Friday evening, right from one of the sites that we were at. So it's important to have all of those things connected together, that one where we can build community. And you'd have thought that man was in church the way he was hollering about, look at God. So you had all of us working together to focus on them. And some of the people, that's all they've basically been needing. I know I was standing at the store one day, and a guy came in and said, hey, what's up, black man? Hey, man, I'm Rick McAfee. He stopped. He grabbed my hand. He said, I need you to pray for me now. And so we all know that for the last 20 or more years, the Black church has been under major attack, some within, some without. The Bible says in the multitude of counselors there is safety. The first counselor that we used to encounter was in the church. Well, you all know and realize the hits that black preachers have gotten. Now, some of it was justified, 90% of it wasn't. And as a consequence, people don't come to church to get the necessary counseling they need and the spiritual help that they need in order to endure the traumatic experiences that we go through in life. So if we keep singing Come to Jesus rather than Go Ye Therefore into all the world, we're going to miss out. And so with this move that we've been making, we've seen great dividends for it.
And you're working with the Attorney General and you're working with the police, with the police chief. How is that working out?
Marvelous. Rondo came from us. When Rondo first started, we were part of the group that helped fight to get black police officers in. When, remember, he was one of the ones who sued the police department for discrimination. And the guy that our 4th precinct commander, Charlie Adams, one of the others, and we work real close together. Todd Axtell in St. Paul with Reverend Ronnie Patterson, them, same thing, Sheriff Fletcher. Because the reality is, y'all, we've had, I think 2 months ago, we had over 12,000 shots since the first of the year. Now, this is Minneapolis, and we have shot spotters. They don't have them in St. Paul, and I can imagine what they're like in Chicago. We know, as sad as it is, that to solve some of this, we're going to have a relationship with the police because some of our people is off the chain. One of my members got ran down in the alley last week in a car. Somebody thought he had stole their motorcycle and bam, just killed him. So we got to have a relationship with the police.
Tio Hardiman, violence interrupters. I mean, you step in the middle of these pain-filled situations. What do you think about what you're hearing and what's going on in Chicago? Tio?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay, so yeah, what's going on in Chicago right now, it's become fashionable for young men to shoot into crowds, and it's fashionable for young men to also carjack people right now. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of these young guys are chasing clout in Chicago. And what I mean by that, they're filming videos talking about all the people they shot and killed. They use the word the people they smoked on, okay? So as crazy as it sounds, Santita, you have somewhat of a purge going on with the young guys that are running the streets of Chicago right now. And the violence is all over the place. Once again, it's like a lot of interpersonal conflict that spirals into gang conflict. But believe it or not, everything is not just money related. A lot of these guys are just trying to make a name for themselves, and they're out here hurting people on a higher level in Chicago this year. We've had close to 450 homicides this year and over 2,400 people shot so far to date. And it's totally unacceptable. But let me say this to everybody as well. See, I think we're looking in the wrong direction, because I've been working on the battlefield on the front line for some time now. The issue of gun violence in Black America is a cultural and tribal issue. You know, I'm not against law enforcement, but law enforcement has not been equipped to deal with the cultural issue. I've been on the national news lately. I'm calling for an army of African-American men to step up and not go out there and take lives, but to unify and bring them guys to the table of peace by any means necessary. It's sort of like kind of force the guys to come to the table of peace so we can work out all the existing conflicts in the community, because that's going to be, drastic times brings about drastic measures. The police are doing the best they can do, don't get me wrong, but they're not equipped to deal with this type of cultural and tribal issue. Like in Liberia, when they had the Civil War, they had child soldiers, teenage soldiers out there killing people. But once the war ended, the men had to go reclaim them young guys and bring them to the table to help transform them back into regular citizens. So right now, our young people are crying out. They don't know how to resolve their disputes. So they need men to step in and really, really, work out and resolve conflicts here in the city on a higher level. So that's my take on it nowadays, Santita and everybody that's listening. It's time for a different approach to reducing gun violence in Black America. And I say that because over 80% of the gun violence that occurs in Chicago occurs in the Black African-American community, like Minneapolis, Detroit, Baltimore, Philly. So that's what's going on right now. I just think it's incumbent upon the Black men to resolve this issue. Professional Black men, everyday Black men. The women can step up too, don't get me wrong. But initially, I just think the men need to really take over their streets, lock down the south side of Chicago for a weekend, lock down the west side for a weekend, and just roll our sleeves up and go to work with these young brothers. I'm talking about in a colossal way.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense to everybody.
Well, I think it does make sense, but we're going to have to work. Men and women are going to have to work together, because men and women created these people. And we cannot, one of the things that I'm very sensitive to as a woman is, as I lift up Black men, and I absolutely do that, I lift up men, period, because I think that Father's Day, for example, is like the forgotten holiday, and I have a problem with that because I've had a great dad, and my brothers are great dads.
Yes.
But the thing is, I know the backbone of my family, the person who sends the messages, like the vertebrae of the family, is my mom. And it takes two. And there's too much separation between folks, whether you're with the father of your child, the mother of your child, or not. It's too much separation. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. We need to be a whole people. We need to be a whole people. And so I'm supporting your efforts. But I don't hear a lot of daylight, quite frankly, between you and Pastor. Pastor, what are you hearing from Tio Hardiman?
Well, if you are, I don't know if you guys know Walter Gator Bradley.
Yes.
Maryland Stamps from years ago. We're the ones that started United for Peace and United in Peace. And that was one of the things that it did, was brought these brothers to the table for negotiation and mediation, which we do that piece as well, without a doubt. That's headed down the right avenue. And when he's speaking of it's got to be the man, he's right, because in that particular culture, while women are certainly respected, that's who you got to have at the table right now. The thing that we're also finding up here is that many of the people that's buying the legal guns are the girlfriends. And spreading them, and sometimes they're using them for income. So there is no distinction with what we're talking about, other than when I talked about dealing with the police, which you still gonna have to do it in Chicago, because there's just some people ain't gonna listen and doing a lot of crazy kind of things. So we're hunting down the exact same path.
Before we have to go, Pastor McAfee, what are your final thoughts? What do you want us to know here in Chicago and all around the country about this state of emergency that they've declared on gun violence in Flint, Michigan? Should that be declared every place else?
I believe it should be, but I also think that some of the things that my brother's doing in Chicago and that we're here, that Rainbow Push, as well as other black organizations, should convene their own groups together to see best practices. And then we join together and start helping these cities and these rural areas, put together some programmatic thrust to help our people. To just stay at home ain't gonna work. We got to get on the block, and we got to bring peace and reconciliation within our own community. And I think that'll strengthen us. But if we don't have jobs and mental health stuff, it will not last.
I'm going to have you respond to that. When we come back, I want to hear from you, Dwight McKee. Indeed, they have done a documentary on the work that you and Pastor Marshall Hatch are doing with young people on the West Side, with young black men. And, let us be mindful of the fact that, violence in America is not just a black problem. You've got Columbine, you've got Pearl, Mississippi, you've got Paducah, Kentucky. We got a real problem in America, red, yellow, black, brown, and white. We're all precious in each other's sight, in God's sight, but we're not treating each other that way. Something's going on here, everybody. It's not a black problem. This is an American problem, an American dilemma. Tipping my hat to Theodore Dreiser in his book. We got an American problem. We got a problem. Got a problem. So I want to hear from you. Pastor McAfee, I love you, and I thank you for being with us today. Give my love to everybody up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, New Salem Missionary Baptist Church. They are taking back our state block by block. The churches are going outside of the walls, and they are finding out what the people's needs are. They're serving the needs of the people. Is that an answer, everybody? We can de-escalate this conflict. We can do that. We should not be target practice on the expressways of Chicago. Come on, everybody. And, I want to hear some more from you, Chapearl, and Dr. Deborah Holden, and Robert Patillo, and Tio Hardman. We're going to hear from you, Dwight McKee, when we get back on the other side of the break on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, wow. Chapearl, what are they saying about Simone Biles?
Every weekday from 11 to 2, right here on WCPT 820. Where
she had a mental health issue, and some people are saying because her ankle. So they said that she should still be in the competition for the individual medals. So we shall see.
Bless her heart. Well, I don't think people realize the kind of pressure that these people are under. It's a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. It's a lot of pressure, and I think for the first time, we're just hearing the athletes talk about it. But it's, this is business, everybody. This is a business. Even the Olympics, they're a business. People invested billions upon billions of dollars in these games. That's why they went forward with it in a pandemic, Dr. Deborah Holden. In one of the least vaccinated countries, industrialized countries on earth. Wow. I mean, if the vaccine is a cure-all, which it's not, come on, but it certainly is a layer of protection. Wow. I don't understand it, but God bless her. She did have a tweet in which she did talk about the pressure that she was feeling. And so, mental health, I think she's under a lot of pressure. She is. She's, been tagged as the greatest of all time, and they're also trying to change the rules in gymnastics so that she won't score as many points because she's so superior to the field. Oh, you guys, they did the same thing with Tiger Woods. What, Robert?
They said she may have an ankle. They're saying she may have an ankle injury.
Mm-hmm.
Then she went up for a move and came down awkwardly and had to limp off the stand.
Mm-hmm. I think she's under an incredible amount of pressure too. Incredible amount. God bless her. God bless her. I love Simone Biles, and I love the leadership that she's given to the team and young athletes who are particularly vulnerable. She's taken them under her wing. Helping those people who have been beaten down by the establishment. She's lifted them up. She is a young woman of tremendous substance and an unparalleled talent. So I'm wishing her all the best. Because heaven knows I want to see her take every medal she can. How about that? Every gold medal she can. How about that? So let's send her some love and send Meddy and Daryl love today. They're July babies. It's been their birthdays yesterday. I wasn't on. Well, I was there yesterday. I was not on Facebook Live. So happy birthday, Daryl. Happy birthday, Meddy. Happy birthday, Meddy. Happy birthday, Daryl. Everybody, send them some love. Effie, you said she felt the pressure of the world on her shoulders. Yes, she did. She feels it. But hate to say it, but it comes with the territory. It comes with the territory. So, as my grandma Helen used to say, if you can't take it, you can't make it. So she's going to have to find a way to be the greatest of all time. And it's uh, heavy is the head that bears that crown. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. Clearly, you can see my own mother would not give me a lot of sympathy. She would say, hey, baby, you wanted this, so come on, let's get with it. So let us all of your get back to you. And Dwight, I'm going to be coming straight to you. Okay?
All righty.
Okay. I want you to react to what you've heard. And what is the name of your documentary?
All the sons.
All the Sons?
Yeah, all our sons.
All Our Sons. Okay.
15 seconds.
All right. Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Peter Jackson Show. Before we go to you, we've got T.O. Hardeman, Violence Interrupters, a brilliant, 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 dedicated public servant. And of course, we've got attorney Robert Patel, who has his own radio show on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. We've got Mrs. Pearl Wells of the Courtney Copeland Foundation and the Somebody Podcast. They're closing on 2 million downloads. It's been tremendous, and they've been winning awards all over the place. Before I get to you, Dwight McKee, Dr. Deborah Verholden, who's been calling this violence, a surge of violence, a public health crisis. She is in Flint, Michigan, and they've declared a state of emergency. I know that you are running today. What are the thoughts you want to leave us with today, Dr. Deborah Verholden?
I think all the work and all the things that we're talking about are so important. And having been involved with the Safe Streets and Seaside program in Baltimore for many, many, many years, seeing the strides that we made in that work, that actually was a strong partnership. We had the T.O. Hardemans on the ground floor. We actually just lost one of our real champions for that program due to gun violence just a few weeks ago. We have solutions. We know what works. The question is, will we as a society and as a nation, answer the call and just do the work and resource the people to do it? We've got plenty of people who know. We've got people on the ground floor. There are certain conflicts that only some people are uniquely qualified to mediate. A lot of violence is retaliation. And so to have people who could be out in the community, but not as a new introduction. This isn't and having been involved in some of these mediations myself, there is no amount of training that I could have got at any university on the planet that would have prepared me nor qualified me to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I see as a public health person working with pastors, working with police, working with violence interrupters, working with, you know, local government to make sure that kids have recreation centers, to make sure that we have parks that are not, you know, breeding grounds for bad activities, but rather places for people to engage, having community centers that are open in late hours so kids have alternatives and places to be, having a living wage so that people aren't forced with these tough decisions around how to earn income. All of these things are connected. None of them happen in a vacuum. And so just picking up one piece of it, yeah, would I rather us do that than nothing? Of course. But all of these systems are connected. And what we really haven't talked about is that these systems were put in place for some people to thrive, and by their very design, for some people to stay down. So I do feel like we're trying to overcome systems and structures without systematic and structural change and support. So that's the thing I'm really pushing for, and that's that movement for me around mandated equity. You know, if they say that violence is a public health crisis and that it matters, well, where's the investment to deal with not just the people, but the systems and the structures that support violence, the systems and the structures that keep people living in poverty generation after generation after generation? Kids don't have a choice what neighborhood they're born into, but that neighborhood that they're born into surely does shape and influence all of their options, all of their opportunities, and then in time shapes and influences their choices and their behavior. But, you know, we look at a child and we have tremendous empathy. Our hearts go out. You see a child that's been hungry or in poverty and your heart is open. But then when you see a 12 or 13-year-old boy who's now been engaged in a gang and maybe has, you know, gotten into trouble, and we go from empathy to apathy real fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I hope that included in this conversation, we really do start to deal with the systems and structures that systematically support keeping some people in some communities down while other communities continue to prosper.
Absolutely. Dr. Deborah Holden, brilliant epidemiologist, and indeed someone who uses all of this vast array of knowledge that she's gotten at the finest universities in the world to really, she puts it where we need it, right here on the ground where we need it and where we can get it. We love you, Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Indeed, they brought her from Johns Hopkins to build that school. And so we just thank you for your work, sending you much love this morning. Dwight McKee, All Our Friends, documentary about the work, some of the great work that you and Pastor Marshall Hatch have been doing here in Chicago, and work that you've been doing, quite frankly, with our youth for years. When I was a little girl, you were head of the youth division at Operation Breadbasket and Operation Push. What about this surge of violence? What is it? Is this a crisis of our civilization, or is it too much access to guns? Is it something else?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said, except with one caveat, is that most of this is spiritual. There's a spiritual deficit among the people, is that, and they're disconnected from God and the laws of God. And so they live almost lives of rebellion and renegade lives. There can really be no peace at the table till there's peace within the people. And our people really many of them confuse dignity with vanity. Their egos get affected, get violated, and they retaliate by going to shoot somebody. Or they go and rob somebody because they don't feel fulfilled in their present lives. And they feel they need to steal somebody's car in order to be somebody. Or they need to take somebody's bank account, rob them, and shoot them because they feel inadequate and they need to subsidize their own self-esteem by plunder or robbery. Or many of the policemen feel inadequate, and so that they round out their self-concept and their self-esteem by stomping somebody down. Much of this is spiritual, which is why Jesus said you need to turn the other cheek. What we do with our kids is 90% of our kids get baptized, and they establish their own relationship with the Most High. And so they then learn how to negotiate life at a spiritual level, and it takes them out of those street reactions. The profound thing that Elijah Muhammad did was introduce a prison population to their spiritual selves and connect them with deity. And so they went from a nation of many guys who had been gangsters to the fruit of Islam because they were reconnected to the Most High. Much of this is spiritual deficiencies and people who feel inadequate who need to be made whole, and much of that is spiritual.
Chaparral, is that what you're seeing?
Absolutely. I think that, right now, Santita, we have so many things that are happening all around Chicagoland. And we're in a spiritual warfare, and not only with ourselves, but also with everyone that's surrounding us. And so we're battling so many fronts. We're battling the police. We're battling, the kids on the street. And we're trying to convey to them that, there's more to life than just violence. There's a different way to resolve conflict. And so we're out here in the streets as well, with the foundation that I have. And we're trying to reach these kids to try to give them different alternatives to violence. But we do need the resources. We do need support. And the thing is that we see like the bigger organizations like the Black Lives Matter, and they're only, to me, they have like a narrow focus in reaching out to just target, police crime. But we have to get to some of this community violence as well. We have to. We have to be able to put some of those resources into the community violence because they're getting millions and millions of dollars, and we have to be able to target it to where we need it at this point, Santita.
Tio Hardeman, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lack of spiritual, type of guidance and a spiritual concept, without a doubt, because, God has to be in the center of all of our work because we have to return back to what's righteous, as far as, within spirit. But also, I agree with the sister when she talked about the resources dealing with mental health, dealing with, economic development in our communities. But a lot of these young men and women are faced with trauma. And earlier today, Santita, when I mentioned the men, I also include, I wanted to make sure we include the women as well. I agree with you there because the women definitely play a valuable role. I just want to make that clear.
You and I have to. I do this all the time. Tio knows I love him, and I love you are because you are a stand-up man, and I love that about you. So let me just start by let me say that.
Over the last 3 months, I just removed 4 women out of a domestic violence situation, and we've mediated around 40 conflicts on the front end, where we save lives. It's not a big number, but it's a solid number here in Chicago. But definitely we need more resources. But with all the resources and take everything else into consideration, if we don't have God in the equation, we're going to continue to lose. That's just the way I look at it, because my program is Christian centered. I've included the Christian principles and dealing with spirituality within my program moving forward, Santita. And then also we organize and facilitate restorative justice peace circles and healing circles. I have healing circles where young guys get a chance to kind of express some of the trauma they've experienced. So one sister was talking about the spirit of retaliation. That's very, very high. We had a guy shot in Chicago 64 times when he was released from the county jail, and the brothers on the streets are saying now they want 64 bodies behind his death. So we have to really go in there and operate and try to remove that cancer out of the minds of some of the young men and bring them to the table of a higher understanding, Santita. So I appreciate everything all the guests are saying, because I believe we all have the same common goal to help reduce the gun violence and change mindsets associated with violent behaviors, one person at a time. So, yeah, I definitely salute the panel here, Santita.
And we salute you. We salute you and all the work that you do. Robert Patillo, what are you seeing in terms of this deficit Because I do believe it's a spiritual deficit because our forebears were not coming out of slavery and breaking the backs of colonialism. We just were not doing this.
Well, what I love about the people you have assembled is you have each different sector represented, and every sector has their place in ameliorating this. You have the ecumenical, the religious sector. You have the medical and the sociological sector. But I look at it from the legal sector and the legislative sector. Look at what they're doing in Portland, Oregon right now. You had an uptick in violent crime. You had an uptick in drug-related crimes. Basically, the same things that have been happening in black inner cities for years started happening to white folks. So what was their response? Did they do midnight basketball? Did they do opening up community centers? They just made fewer things illegal. And then the violence and crime started going down almost immediately. So I think we have to start looking at what some of these comparative models. If you look at what happened during Prohibition, for example, you had Al Capone and the mob running wild throughout Chicago and around the country, bootleggers and rum runners all across the country, St. Valentine's Day massacres taking place. Then they ended Prohibition, and the stuff ended. So we have to look at changing some of the laws on the books so that you remove the economic incentive for the drug gangs. You have to change some of the laws on the books so that you make it easier for people to have access to housing and access to jobs and access to the American dream. So I think we cannot let our political leadership off the hook, and we have to start talking to some of them and saying, well, look, if the things you've been doing for the last 30, 40 years have not been working at all, I mean, in the slightest, and in many cases have made things worse, why don't we just work on making fewer things illegal and making it easier to remove the economic incentive, make it easier instead of trying to punish our way out of the problem, to liberate our way out of the problem, and then work in all the other sectors where we can bring back a free and liberated society. People have other ways to make money. We remove the economic incentive to commit crimes which drives much of the violence. And I think you get to a better place. If these models have worked previously legislatively, I don't see why we cannot have them work for our communities.
Call me 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I want to know what your thoughts are today. What can we do about the violence? Should we be target practice on expressways? No. Should we have a state of emergency declared about gun violence in the United States? What would that do? Should we begin to deploy teams from churches? Should our government agencies work with all of us and help to fund these programs where people will go out into the blocks and go into people's homes or meet people where they are? You have a lot of people who are in a lot of pain out here. Jim from Chicago, what's on your mind?
Good morning. I just think we value money over human life. And a good example is this vaccine. The big companies, for profit, one in Germany, one in England, refuse to give up their intellectual property to spread this vaccine throughout the world. They will let 1 million people die because of money. And as long as we value money more than we do human life, we're always going to be in this situation. I know that it's hard to change it around, but you have to keep it from that perspective that human life is more important than money. And you guys have a good morning.
Well, hold on, Jim. Let me ask you this. Do you think that do you think that's driving? I mean, do you think that's eating away at us at the core? Jim, well, why don't you all respond to Jim? Let me start with you, Robert.
You want me to respond to Tito?
Oh, well, Tio. Well, I'll start with you, Tio, and then you, Robert. I'll go all the way down the line.
I hear what Jim's saying. All the gun violence is not just about money, though. Some people think it is. It's about a high level of education. People have poor impulse control, and some people just, they don't know how to just deal with themselves and address the trauma they've experienced in their lives. So hurt people hurt other people. Money is a part of the problem, but it's not the overall issue, because you can drop $1 billion in the heart of Chicago right now, and you still may not reduce the gun violence. You have a $1.7 billion police budget, and you have a lot of money being spent in violence prevention, right? I'm talking about millions of dollars So it's not necessarily a money issue. It's just a matter of really raising the consciousness of people, like saying the spiritual way first, and then we can work everything else out, Santita. That's just my take on it.
What about this, Robert Patillo?
Well, I think you see this often in capitalist societies. Part of capitalism is the concept that everybody has to be for themselves. They have to be conniving. They have to be working towards their own personal edification. So I do think the money motive is going to be part of it. And we do preach in this society materialism. The craziest part about the crime to me is that people are not killing each other to survive. It's not about whether or not you're going to starve to death or whether or not you're going to have shelter over your head. Violence in homeless communities is amazingly low compared to the overall violence numbers. These people are killing each other because you have the shoes that I want, or you have a car that I think I should have, or you disrespected me in the community, and now there's disrepute upon my name. And I think once we can start breaking down those societal issues, that of course is a part of the tapestry, what's going to be needed to create a solution. There's not a one-size-fits-all, one sector is going to fix it, but everyone's going to have to lift their own weight and lift their own part of it in order to come to a solution.
Before I hear from Chapearl and Dwight, Renee called in. Renee, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, and thanks for taking my call. I have a few questions. If the young shooters are making bragging videos about their crimes, why is the solve rate so low in Chicago? If police are involved in their own gang initiations like you guys talked about yesterday, perhaps killing and providing guns to misguided young people to kill might be a part of their agenda. How many guns have been turned into buyback programs in Chicago only to turn up at crime scenes? And then we have the police who shot or shoot our people and claim they fear for their lives. Or as in the case of little Stephen Rosenthal, they shot him in the head and they claimed he committed suicide, even though people saw what they did. Who's killing us on the streets and shooting us on the expressways? A policewoman was just fired for the crime she committed in 2017 when she chased an off-duty young black police officer, 32-year-old man who lived in the Lawndale area. She chased him going up over 100 miles per hour. He had a collision with Santita Adams, and they both died. She was just fired. Who's giving the young people guns? Eddie Johnson waited for 10 months as he watched on a secret Facebook page, a first-year teacher at Austin Elementary School. He watched as he bought guns, and he sold these guns to the elementary school children. Young people can't shoot guns if they aren't given guns to shoot. And young people who are picked up for curfew can't be on the street to shoot people. So why don't they enforce the curfew laws? You should not have kids outside at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock is past their curfew, until we have men and women who really serve and protect as they're paid to do, instead of people who are just there collecting a check, who don't necessarily like the people in the neighborhoods they're supposed to police. We're going to have problems, or until they finish running all of us out of this city because we're scared and we sell our properties because, it's gentrifying in my neighborhood in North Lawndale and in Austin where I work. It is changing, but the people I see moving in don't seem to be afraid. It's us that are being targeted. So until they have a will to stop this violence, there's going to be violence. Santita, one day, this was a while ago, my car had gotten hit while I was at work, and I tried to drive it home, and it broke down. This policeman, a white policeman, gave me a ride home, and he drove by these kids who were standing on the corner doing things illegal, and he told me that he was biding his time until he retired. So he didn't, he just let them do what they do. One night, when I used to be a stepper, I was coming home, and I saw a policeman who was aiming his car at this woman that these other two people called Sally. She was apparently on drugs and stuff. And he aimed his car at her. He didn't hit her. I'm terrified. Then he gets his car door and he knocks it into the lady and he knocks her down. I called the police about that. This is before there were the cameras on the phone. We have people who do things, policemen, and nothing happens. We don't know who's doing what and where the guns are coming from. The train cars that they let the kids know about, I don't know.
You're right. I mean, but it's a mess, and we got to clean it up. I mean, and then you also have some police officers who. I mean, you have a lot of great police officers. Unfortunately, they get tainted by the corrupt ones. And that happens in all professions, unfortunately. You have underperforming teachers. I mean, who taint the profession and on and on and on it goes. And you know what? I don't want to fix the blame. I want to fix the problem, as my brother Jonathan said so often. I have literally 60 seconds for use, Chaparral Wells. The Somebody podcast, everybody downloaded. It is fantastic. 60 seconds, Chaparral.
Santita, I think that what Renee was saying is so true. We have to do a better job of policing. I think that we have to hold our police force accountable for solving some of these murders and put their feet to the fire, because too many people are dying in Chicago and too many people are getting away with the crime. I mean, like I said, right now it's like a 15% murder clearance rate, and that's unacceptable for any city in the country, but especially for a large city like Chicago. And the only way that we're going to actually curtail this violence is hit it where it is, and that's with the education, with jobs, and actual one-on-one contact with these offenders. We have to get in the street.
And with the intention of ending violence, everybody. Really. Dwight McKee, I have just under a minute for you. You got it.
Church is not the answer, but church is the place where you find the answer. The temple is not the answer, but the temple is the place where you find the answer. The mosque is not the answer, it's the place where you find the answer. This is spiritual depravity, and if the cops and the crooks got the same issue, is both of them get their self-esteem from what they do rather than who they are. We really need to be made whole and be born again, as the book says. Until that happens, we have the same corruption at every level, whether it's the police, whether it's the young bucks in the street, whether it's the guys in the pulpit.
Yes.
Until all of us are born again and are tied into something bigger than ourselves, it'll be the same situation.
Bigger, and that is which is good. The devil is big too, but God is bigger. Everybody, we can do well, we can do right, and we're going to have to if we're going to survive, let alone thrive. God bless you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Let's think about what we can do to have peace. We talk a lot about violence, but what would a peaceful world look like? Teal Hardiman, Dwight McKee, Chaparral Wells, Attorney Robert Patillo, WAOK, every Sunday, 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. All of you, Reverend Stephen Thurston, thank you for making this show what it is, everybody. Love you, love you, love you. Pastor Jerry McAfee, can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.
Thank you.
What does your choice?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to let you go.
Friends, Tom Hartman here. You listen to WCPT, so that likely means...
Let's let everybody go. How did you feel? Hey, love you, everybody.